Hi, in this video we are going to look into the team module. Team module is an add-on to your license that allows you to split a model into separate files, or actually to combine multiple files into one larger project. This will allow you either to work alone on really large projects, dividing them into specific categories, one for example for the main structure, the other one for the lighting, the other one for HVAC, and so on. Of course, if you work with several teammates, this also allows you to share the load and actually work each of you in specific area of the model or either on specific trade. So let's look into it. For this, we are going to use one of these projects here called Max the Ball, actually been built in Switzerland. And here we've split this model into three separate models. One for the main structure, the other one for the secondary structure, and lastly, the overall shell or the hull. So here, how to activate team. To activate team, you will of course have to have it unlocked on your license. When you go to Tools, you will find here the option Team. This will open this additional dockable window that will by default be docked on the left side of the screen. One of the new features in this newest version is the ability to actually undock that window. You have also simply by clicking on this icon. You can also grab it and anchor it to the right side if you'd like. The first thing that you will need to do in order to work or combine multiple files will be to create a repo. This means that first all these files should be stored in the same folder. So the first step again is simply to create a repo. You will here use this first icon. Once the repo is made, the second icon is now available. This will simply allow you to add the current file. Based on the size of the file you just added, you might have to wait for a few seconds or a bit more, simply because everything that you do here requires you to save the file back. So it will take the same time as actually exporting a 3D from the existing file. Now that we have this, everything is now ready for us to include additional files. We're just going to call the other files and open here the team module. Tools and Team. As you can see here, the repo needs to be made only once. So here I can directly add this file in now. By doing this, you see that we directly see that there was already one file added to that repo, the one that we just did, currently set in revision 1 by user Bert. Of course here all users will be the same, because I'm basically dividing this to work on my own, but if you were to work with other people, of course, you will see the user of the person currently using the file with its version of the team open. In order to set that up, you will need to click on the gears, and here you can select your name and specific information. We're just going now to add the third model, and here we simply include the whole file. Of course, you can also include an empty file. It doesn't need to have already element inside for it to be added to the repo. Okay. One thing here that has been added since the last version is the actually ability to remove a file from a repo. Okay, so this will actually remove it from this list, making it impossible for other users to load it in their file. Speaking of which, how can we actually do that now? Now that we have all files available in our repo, we can load them individually in the other files. So here I'm currently in my main structure, and I would like simply to include to this my secondary 3D. I'm just going to tick the box in front of the file name, and this will load in a 3DC file from the available revision. So the one basically that we've initially commit when adding the file to the repo just a few moments ago. Okay, so when the file is finally loaded in, you see here that it says that the current revision that is available and loaded in the file is revision 1, which is the most up-to-date, hence that green cube. So we know here that we have nothing that is left for us to load from this file. You see here that there is performance speed mode. Activating a speed mode will load the file differently than the one we currently have. For those of you familiar with container blocks, you might recognize the type of elements. Those are what we call immutable elements. If I were to zoom in here on the bottom leg, for example, we will have the element that were previously in our file, so basic elements, and here we have the element coming from the secondary file. By default, you see here that everything is joined together, so if I select one element, everything is activated. This allows you to quickly hide and focus only on this, or even to hide it to focus on your main project. And then you can bring everything back with J as you would normally do on element from your file. Hiding the element will be a better and faster solution than unloading the file, because this will, of course, add additional loading time. When you are in this kind of advanced here representation, if we go in join red for us to be able to select individual component, we will see that we can have access to all of its information. Sizes, production numbers, name, material, everything. The only thing that you cannot do with these elements is modify them. If you try to, it will simply tell you that this element is immutable. So it can only be modified and edited currently in file secondary 2025.3d. The thing that you can do, on the other hand, is if you need to, you can simply copy an element. So if I were to copy this next to it here, this file or this element is now in my main structure file. So here I can do any modification to this element, and if, for example, I would like to show like specific cuts that I would like to be added to this element, I would just need to edit this element and send it back to my colleague. We will see in a minute here how we can easily transfer a file or an element or a group of elements between files. The other thing I wanted to show you here is this actual representation. You see here that my element secondary is set to be cyan, hence the color used here. This color can be changed in the file, in the corresponding file. Here, for example, my main structure, if it was also loaded in any other file, it will be cyan. Same goes for my secondary file. Let's say that I would like to change that for my shell. I would simply need to access this file, and in the theme window, simply make sure to change that color. Let's say here that we would like a brownish or orange color. Here we go. And if we were now to load this one into, let's say, our secondary file, so to load a file, we will simply tick the box in front of the file name. Okay, so now here we see that shell imported in that second file with the right color. So here, one thing about the different ways of importing file. So here we've used the classic mode, which gives you access to the actual items that I just showed earlier. Every single node, point, and vertices of the element can be used exactly as they would be in this file, to the exception, of course, that they cannot be edited. If you are to, let's say that I would need here just to do some control and have an understanding of the whole thing, and I would like to also import that shell, but since it's not directly affecting my main structure, I could here ask to import it with speed mode. So we will first select the speed mode and then load the file in. You will see that this type of load takes, of course, less time, but the main difference is what you can do with what you now display. You see here that if I select one part of the shell, it's going to activate what we know as a show object. So instead of being individual element, this is actually made thanks to an HSF file. So it's basically one single file englobing everything. The only thing here is also that can be beneficial is that you can actually see like the textures that were set in the previous file. The only thing is you cannot really use that. If you would like to take like dimensions, as you can see here, I can still place node. Okay, I don't have any information about the element individually, but I can still pick nodes. This might not be active on all computers. The option for this is actually a global setting of your 3D file that you can edit in your graphic settings under expert mode, others, and boundary box selection for show object should be left unchecked. If you check it, when you select a show object, the active point will only be placed on this dashed box and not on the individual component. Okay. So again, go into graphic mode, expert tab, others, and make sure that this option is left unchecked. So here, the other way of loading the references, you can tick the first, of course here choose first whether you need speed or not, and here you can simply load all the references at once or unload all of them as well, simply by clicking one of these two icons. So here let's look the other options. The first one here is called transfer selected part. Let's say that, so here we took this and we need to do some modification to it for any reason, and I want to send that back to the person using that secondary frame. So I can simply select the element or group of element I would like to transfer and click on the transfer icon. It's going to allow you to add a message. So there is one element and it comes from main structure. This, you cannot edit that. Let's do the transfer. When you do the transfer, the element will automatically leave your file. And as long as it's not taken by any others, this file or this element won't be part of your project. Okay. So here, to see when you have pending transfer, all files here will have this icon turn red. So any file can actually accept that transfer. If you would like to make sure that the right person takes this, you can actually send them a message. So here, of course, it's like sending a message to myself, but let's do it. So here, transfer pending for file secondary. So you can add any type of message, and here it will be in the in that log command. So let's go now in that secondary file, and here we can actually accept the transfer. When you open this, you will need here to select which transfer you want to take, because of course multiple ones could be pending at the same time. So select them, and here you will see advanced information. So the date it came from, the time, the file, the user using this file, and here basic message that we've entered earlier. So we can here now accept. Now we have here this second element. Let's say that we do modification. So here to modify this, actually I'm just going to leave it this way for now, not going to go far in depth in actual modeling. So here it means that this file is actually modified. It's a new version. In order to update or upload that new version, you will need to commit your changes. And here you would use the arrow pointing right to commit. The other one is to revert, so to load a previous revision. So here we are going to commit this new revision. You can, of course, add a message. It's not necessary. And as we can see here, this is something new. When you commit a file, you could only include active elements. Let's say that here we made some modification and we have another side project on the side, and we just want to upload this main building. We can simply select it and here simply upload the active items. Okay, so now that we did the transfer, you see that now this file is now in revision 2. If we are to go to the other file, where this file was already loaded in, so it was the main structure, you will see that here it's flagged red because it's a file that is loaded and not yet updated. So here to update it. Okay, and now we see that we have now the latest revision, and we see indeed our second item. Once your project complete, you can actually generate a master file. A master file is simply a combination of all of them at once. In order for you to create a master file, you will first need to create a new empty file. So let's go ahead and do it directly from here. New 3D. Now that we are in the master file, we will again need to open the team module. But here we do not add the master to the repo. This is only for working file. Here we can simply click on the icon here, generate master file. A master can be made at the end of the project to combine everything for entering production for your archives, or also be used at different moments in time during the project, simply to run some verification in that model without affecting the others. So here, of course, in the master, the elements are no longer linked in any way or form to the file they actually come from. So here it's really a add 3D file into that master file. So we simply combine all of those into one. And if you want to, you will be able to continue working in that master file and editing all possible elements. Okay, now so after everything is loaded, and here use this to have a zoom out, and here we have a global project ready to go, with all the elements, of course, available for you to edit, as you would do in any normal file. So at this time here, you can actually close the team in the master. It's no longer needed. One thing to know about this in the other file. If, for example, I'm in the main structure and I'm closing the team module, closing the team module will actually simply unload everything you have. So you are not longer connected to the repo. So you will only keep on your file visible the element that actually belong to that 3D file. Those are actually the element that are saved within this file. The other are actually not saved inside, so when you reopen the file, you will need to reload all these external references. Let's do a quick tour on the way the files are organized. So here we add our 3 original files. So they had to be saved in the same folder. So here, if you work locally, it's not an issue. But if you want to work with, of course, colleagues, this will need to be on a server that can be accessed by anyone or by everyone in this project. When you create the first repo, so when we were in the main structure and we initialized the team, it made this folder called .cwteam. This should not be edited or removed. If you do so, you break everything that was previously done in team, including pending transfer, revision, and logs. When you open this, every single revision will be saved and also transfer. So here we have revision 1 of the main structure, revision 1 of the secondary file, revision 2 of the secondary file, and revision 1 of the shell one. You also have the HSF version of each file, which is the speed mode version we've seen. And here you have the transfer. The transfer is simply named after the ID of the transfer itself. So this is, of course, the value that we've seen in the transfer tab. And all transfer will, of course, start with T and followed by their ID. Then here we have all data, and this is more about like the different logs and so on. But usually you will not go in there. So the team module appears to be a simple tool, but it can be really helpful in really large projects, or even, as we said earlier, if you wish to split a project for your own sake, this is something that you can do also working by yourself. You don't need to work with other people in order to benefit from the team module. If you would have any questions about the team module or would like to give it a try, reach out to your Cadwork representative for them to unlock it to your licenses, knowing that the team needs to be available, of course, on all licenses that will be used in that project for them to, of course, have access to the team module. If not, they will simply be able to work in file as they would normally do. I hope it will be useful in your project, mostly the largest one. And again, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.